Listen, Roblox is not just a video game. It's like a gaming sandbox. You get to make your own worlds. People can maybe come and join them if they want to. But sometimes art imitates life, and that is what's happening here. While Los Angeles had big protests over ICE immigration raids, gamers on Roblox were role-playing as ICE agents and also protesters throwing tacos at those ICE agents. So today we're going to ask, can a video game be a proxy for protest? I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Alyssa Mercante is here. Kieran Press-Reynolds is here. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to have you here. I'm delighted to be doing this conversation, although there's something a little unsettling about all of this. Alyssa, I'm going to start with you because what I didn't mention there is just how popular Roblox is, because like 85 million people play it every day. Most of them are younger, most of them children. Mm-hmm. Today we're talking about a specific place in the game called Brook Haven, because that's where these protests, virtual protests, are happening. You spent a fair bit of time in Brook Haven. Would you mind doing us the honors of describing it? Take us there. What's going on in Brook Haven?
So Roblox is, and it's essentially a video game platform that allows most of the time kids to create their own games and experiences. So there's a whole swath of things that you can play in there. There's dress-up games, there's garden games, but Brook Haven is a role-playing server where people kind of go into this idyllic suburb and they take jobs like nail tech or cop or what have you. They buy a house and they drive around in their cars and they just kind of, role play as adults with jobs, which is very interesting to think about kids doing. But it's just a very basic suburb that has, a gas station, a police station, and everything else that you would expect to see in like middle America.
And then what's happening there now, would you say?
So now there are, at least for the last, now at this point, more than 10 days, maybe close to 2 weeks, mostly kids have been engaging in anti-ICE protests that many believe kicked off after some were role-playing as ICE agents and going into other kids' houses to, quote unquote, arrest them. And they pop up sporadically. Sometimes they're planned and you have to join a specific server by someone who's starting it. But the one that I went into was just a random server that it just started happening organically.
Look, I have a child. I have an 8-year-old. And my child does sometimes, hear stuff that is happening in the news. The notion that people's kids would go like, let me play around with what it would feel like to have a job, somewhere in a city as an ICE agent and take, sort of orchestrate immigration raids. That's the thing that sort of feels a little bit surreal to me. Kieran, would you mind describing what that would even look like if you're in Brook Haven and you're playing in this world and then suddenly, I assume, a van pulls up? What happens?
I mean, I feel like the operative word is uncanny. Like this is a server where it's meant to simulate real life. So it could be like these blocky avatars that are wearing like lifelike vests. It says, they're in like vans, dark vans that say ICE, that pull up a bunch, like a mob of people come out. They're toting weapons. They go into like a chicken restaurant that's modeled off of a real restaurant, and they just begin shooting people or taking people hostage. I saw one video that was like a man selling elote with like a very like lifelike beard and hat and like flannel, and he was being pulled into a dark van that was flashing lights. So, I mean, it's very, I don't know, harrowing to see, even if it's like in this, Lego rendered visual.
Okay, I want to now talk a little bit about like emotion, because we spent a fair bit of time sort of describing the world, describing what happens here. And as you were describing that, Kieran, Alyssa was sort of like shaking her head like, oh my God, what is happening? But like, what does it feel like for you, Kieran, watching all of this unfold? Because like to me, that's, if you could be anything in a video game, I'd go, I'll be a ballet star, not an ICE agent who wants to sort of go into a restaurant and go like, hey, let me take people out of this place. So what does it feel like for you watching this?
I mean, it's kind of upsetting. It's like you don't expect, there's this video game that is ostensibly for kids where you can kind of build what you want, like Minecraft, meant to be freeing and constructive. And I mean, it doesn't seem great that kids are using it as a chance to role play as like, ethnic nationalist fantasies, and kind of live that out in this third space setting. It's definitely a bit chilling, even if some of it might be under the guise of playing around or simulation.
I should mention, Alyssa, this is not the first time that Roblox has sort of been the site of something like this. There were some Roblox protests of the Black Lives Matter protests back in 2020. How is this one different, do you think? How is watching this one different?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because heard some reports that some of the kids who were role playing as ICE agents started joining after people were protesting that initial behavior, and they were sort of doing it to police the fact that people were bringing like protests into their game because they just wanted to play. So it does
Hmm.
seem like there's some different ideologies as to why these kids are doing this. I mean, yes, there are some kids who are, aping or mimicking things that they're hearing or seeing on TV that might be pretty aggressively right leaning, but it also does seem like some of them are just like, I just want to be in this game and do this, and you guys are bothering me. What's
Hmm.
really different is this kind of split. The Black Lives Matter protests, I'm not positive if there was like actual examples of people role playing as cops, mimicking police brutality. But when there were marches for pro-Palestine movements in 2023, it was just marches. It was just people walking. This is very chaotic. It's much more focused. There's a lot more, Mexican American like Mexican flags and Mexican American heritage and
People
culture, all
throwing
of that thrown
tacos
in
at
here.
the ICE
People
agents, right?
throwing tacos,
Yeah,
ordering elote,
yeah.
but then there is also this chaos that it all kind of consistently they all seem to boil into boil up to where
Hmm.
it starts as people waving signs and then all of a sudden there's, cop cars flying up and down the street, sirens blaring, running through the center of the town, running over curbs. You can't really hit pedestrians, but running through players. Then the next
Yeesh.
thing you know, there's fires in the street. The police station was on fire at the protest that I went to. So it is a mix of that kind of chaos that we're seeing in the real world, which I haven't seen in any of these protests yet. And also just very clear examples of kids being like silly and stupid with this,
Hmm.
like being very goofy and strange. And the gun stuff is really odd because it just started happening like out of nowhere during the protest I was in, and it just wouldn't stop. Then every kid grabbed a gun or every player grabbed a gun and was shooting it off. And it just seems a little bit more chaotic and always on the precipice of it kind of descending into madness, which is definitely different than the other ones.
I want to maybe hold on that for a moment and go deeper into this because I can understand if you are sort of playing out what your community looks like, what your suburb looks like, that you want to capture a pride march, that you want to capture a protest that took place, and you sort of maybe like organize that in a video game setting. It feels like a different thing, Kieran, even if it came after the fact as a reaction to this. It feels like a different thing for players to then say, to basically act out like state fantasy, right? Like to sort of like play into that role. Do you read that as players and kids sort of authentically expressing beliefs, or do you see that as part of like a trolling culture that maybe exists online? And not to say that that's any less dangerous, but I think
Mhm.
like there's sort of like I think some contextualization that it might be needed. How do you read that, Kieran?
I mean, I think, without knowing what these kids exactly are thinking, I think it's twofold. I mean, Roblox has become such a stage for real life ideologies and for kids to do things that they can't necessarily do in real life yet. So I
Hmm.
could definitely see a child who is too young to go to a protest or to exercise their bigotry to want to role play that in some fashion on Roblox. But I mean, and there is like I could see definitely like there being like an incel faction within Roblox or a far right faction. I could see there being like a 4chan side of Roblox. But then I guess there's also this element of like there's been a real brain rottification of the internet, and in the last few years where everything has been kind of spun into this surrealist shit post. And I think the fact that in real life this thing is so serious with such grave consequences
Hmm.
wouldn't surprise me if that makes it more thrilling for people to kind of role play and turn into a joke.
Hmm.
And I don't think that makes it any less harmful. I mean, that's still, it's kind of making a mockery out of these things. And if it's ruining other players' experiences who are just trying to peacefully protest, then I mean, you're pretty much ruining their hangout
Their
space,
gaming
their video
experience, yeah.
game.
Well,
Yeah.
this might be maybe a useful moment to bring in the woman from your reporting, Alyssa, with the 8-year-old son. She's from Puerto Rico. Do you want to tell that story?
Yeah. So during my research, I was obviously just watching all these TikToks that people were posting of the
Eh.
protests. Because again, they're kind of a flash in the pan thing that unless you're joining a specific server, you might not find. And I saw one from a woman who was just recording herself in game saying that she made a character in Roblox, downloaded the game to protest with her son. So I reached out to her. Her son's 8. And she essentially told me that, he came to her and said, I want to go to these protests in this game. I've been seeing my friends talking about it. I've been seeing TikToks about it. And so she basically said she wanted to meet him where he was and show him that she supported him and that, she believed in what he believed in. And she said it was an incredibly, touching experience and something that she was really proud of, to see that even her 8-year-old understood that this was something that is really important, that these people who this is happening to, it is ruining lives and ruining families. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it was a young Puerto Rican kid that had some sort of emotional connection to this, because I'm sure there are instances in his life or in his family's life where they have experienced something like this, or they know people who have experienced something like this. So it was really touching, honestly, to talk to her about it. And it's very easy to jump into Roblox. So it is definitely easy for parents to kind of quickly pick it up and just walk around in that world, even if you don't know how to buy a house or do stuff like that. So it was really nice to see. And she seemed incredibly touched by it.
Just with a couple of minutes that we have here, I just want to talk about these protests, maybe in the context of optimism is not quite the word for it, but some kind of usefulness, which is to say, do you read these protests existing on Roblox? I'll start with you, Alyssa, on this. Do you read them as an investment? Do you read them as like a political investment from young people into their political universe, and as a result, like a way to learn how to protest and a way to learn how to engage through protest? Is that your read of it?
Yeah, I think, look, Roblox has also aged up over the last few years with players who started playing this when they were 8, 9, 10, still playing it, that are, now 13, 14, 15.
Yeah.
And they're obviously encountering this stuff more regularly, even in their schooling and in their learning. They're learning about, the history of this country. I do think that in many cases, this is an example of kids who are trying to process something that they're seeing every day and trying to understand not only what it means for their friends and their family, but for the country as a whole. I think we wrongfully consider kids as future citizens when they are citizens. And what's going on with ICE, especially in LA and in Southern California, is affecting children, in some cases more so than it's affecting adults, because their caretakers are being taken away, their coaches, their teachers are scared. There's worry that they shouldn't be going outside during recess or doing intramural sports because they might get snatched by an ICE agent. They are deporting children as well. So I think this is an example of these kids who might actually want to go do this in person, maybe if they're on the older end, or go with a parent that don't want to go outside and take that risk, or they just want to also understand what the conversation is. Maybe they are trying to figure out where they land on this, political landscape. And I think it's something that I'm optimistic about, because they have politicized an essentially depolitical place, which is interesting.
Kieran, about a minute left here, but how do you read this? Do you read it as sort of like a pathway to learning how to protest?
Yeah, I very much agree with Alyssa. I think that Roblox is almost like what Facebook promised the metaverse would be and then couldn't deliver on. It's like it is this world that for a lot of kids is like their new cafe. It is their recess yard. It is the space where they meet friends and they talk to people. And so, it's having like a real nurturing effect on what they believe in. And I think, just because it's online, people tend to discredit TikTok activism, movements that, spawn on other platforms. I think that, maybe a kid could become radicalized by having their avatar shot by an in-game ICE agent. And also maybe it helps them feel like part of the movement when they can't, and makes them want to, do more research, talk to their family about it, talk to their teachers. Like, I think it could have a positive effect for sure.
I'll tell you this, Kieran, for the rest of the day, I'm going to be thinking about the idea of getting radicalized by your avatar being shot by an in-game ICE agent, which is an incredibly 2025 sentence. But in the meantime, I got to say thank you to both of you. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for being here, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Alyssa Mercante is a video game and internet culture journalist. You can read her piece on Roblox protests in Rolling Stone. And Kieran Press-Reynolds is a digital culture writer. You can read his piece in the New York Times. For the folks watching us on YouTube, we're going to say goodbye right now. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion.